Good afternoon. It is good to be here. It is good to be anywhere on this side of heaven, to be honest with you. But we are here today because of a major concern with regards to the proposed budget passed by the House a few weeks ago. The types of implications that it will have not only upon the United States of America, but the implications that it will have around the globe. During this season of Lent, we are moving toward a period where we acknowledge crucifixion, and yet at the same time, we acknowledge the power of resurrection. And in my faith tradition, I am always reminded that those are two bookends to possibilities. Crucifixion is the beginning of becoming something very different, if we believe. And resurrection is that transformative power that can do abundantly more for us than we can do for ourselves. So we come today in a prayer vigil not as some kind of idle witness, but a belief that when we appeal to the most high and almighty power there is, things will take place that we could not even imagine. As a matter of fact, a House-passed budget, it really becomes a setup for God to once again prove that God is still in charge. And so we are waiting for the setup, but we are actively moving in the midst of it to build that structure by which, when the day is ushered in, we will not be here with idle hands, but busy hands transforming and making a new world and new possibilities. It was after the resurrection that the story is told that the apostles went to a place called the upper room, Mary's house. And the attempt there was to gather themselves through fear and brokenness, through sorrow and pain, to gain some sense of what their direction would be. And in those moments of gathering together, 40 days and 40 nights, the Spirit came among them. Once again gave them new life and possibilities that they did not have on day one. But our scriptures remind us, together they left that room 40 days later. They left having been engaged in prayer and supplication. And so it is truly, truly significant today that we begin this day with prayer, unity, gathering together around a single purpose. This is an important time in history. There's a transition waiting on a transformation. 157,000 at-risk children, mostly dependent upon programs like Head Start, could lose education, health, nutrition, and other services provided by Head Start, which promotes school readiness among the most at-risk children. Almost 1.8 million unemployed workers will no longer have access to important employment and training services, including services that match job seekers with labor market employer needs, job training, job search, and other employment assistance for low-income adults and workers whose jobs have been eliminated. And we come here today recognizing the 3.1 million families, if this budget is passed, in the U.S., mostly single mother income and families and elderly women will lose light heat benefits that help them afford to heat and cool their homes in the winter and the summer. We know there's a struggle with the federal deficit. We know there's a struggle with pulling together a budget at this time. See, our advocacy is not necessarily believing that we don't need to cut. Our advocacy says, why don't we cut military spending? The three wars that we are in. Why don't we begin to look at the mismanagement of our government and the structured struggles that we are facing? And I come today not just as a director of a Washington office. I come today as a former pastor just 10 months ago. I saw the soup lines and the bread lines. We stood with the poor and those who were broken, despised, dejected, demeaned, and damned on the edges of life. The hurt, the pain, those who lost their jobs, the middle class whose homes were foreclosed on and found themselves in soup lines and soup kitchens, and some are in tents on hills in California. And yet amid all of that, we're talking about now cutting even further those who have been here to bear the burden in the heat of the day. There is something wrong with that. There is something spiritually wrong with that. And that means that the spiritual community must move, must be active, not only here in Washington, but on the ground. We must empower people to do the work of resisting this temptation to become marginalized by political parties, and to declare that there is a new day when God's people will stand and give reason and resonance to a new awakening in this society that demands a new course of action. So even when we look at the global response to this budget, reminded of what will take place on that front, our inability to be first responders in the midst of disasters, our inability to be able to ensure food security, our inability as a nation to be able to champion the causes of those who have been left behind and locked out all across the globe. We talk about restoring the right to be number one, but it is not being number one in power. The power we are talking about is not born out of domination and control. It is not born out of measuring life from the top down, but instead from the bottom up. The kind of power we are talking about walks with those who cannot walk for themselves, stands with those who cannot stand for themselves, gives reason and rhyme and possibility beyond the brokenness of life, and declares that there's a new day being ushered in. We begin that today as a faith community, and we ought to thank God for giving us this opportunity. So in this moment, let this be a pep rally for our spirit. Let it be a prayer time for our souls. Let it be a moment by which we commit to a larger, more expansive claim in life. That our life is not about individualism, nor is it about mass collectivism. But our life is built on the power of faith that drives us beyond ourselves. We see ourselves as vessels for the transformation of humankind. That's what faith is all about. No matter what faith tradition you may come from, that's what faith is all about. Amen. Amen. It is about knowing that God is sovereign and powerful. Therefore, we don't weep yet. Therefore, we don't mourn a loss that has not yet come. We believe in the midst of even unbelief. We declare a new day, even in the midst of the same old song. And so today we stand. We stand not just here in the nation's capital in this crowd gathered, but we stand with those back home. We stand with those in villages and hamlets whose name we do not know. We stand with those who are suffering and broken by the winds of oppression and domination and control. And we declare that help is on the way. Help is on the way. We are getting ready for the setup that God has put in place that will ultimately declare, yes, God is still God, and God is still on the throne. That's what our mantra is today as we walk by faith and not by sight, my friends. Amen. So today we're here to share the good news. The good news. Congress is not in charge. The God of life is in charge. And that's who we serve. And that's who we stand with today. The God who gives life and health and strength and the ability to protest, even in the midst of struggling times. Let us keep the faith. And you will hear from some people here today who come to bring just a little word of hope and possibility, and to bring some strategies by which we can gain the resonance of power to transform all that is being proposed. This world is not about a budget. This world is about the benevolent spirit of those who come together and declare that a new day is on the way.